Yeah, so we'll just hold off for a second.
I can try it. She's like, don't make me cry.
We get like some Jeopardy music or something.
Yeah, or like slowly dying.
And there we go. So I have no honest idea how to follow that. Hats off to Nadia.
Sorry,
that was
thank
amazing.
you.
So I'm going to ask y'all to bear with me for a few more minutes here. Then y'all can go about your Friday. So my name is ZBarnes. I've been in government school for 4 years, full rank. And as you can see from the big thing behind me, my project is on forest fragmentation, which is basically self-explanatory. It's the process of taking large contiguous tracts of forest land, say 100 acres, 50 acres, something like that, and then breaking it down to smaller and smaller tracts, basically islands of forest land in a sea of human development. And the root cause of this, and this is something I found from people who specialize, their job is to deal with this, is that it's inheritance. And this makes a lot of sense. The average age of a Virginia landowner, particularly forest land and farmland as well, is a little over 55 years of age. So when these individuals pass on and their children stand to inherit the land, the only way to do things fairly is to divide it evenly among the children, 2 ways, 3 ways, however. And they live their lives and pass it on, and so again, it's exponential. And that really is the main cause. There are several others that should probably be mentioned. One is the fact, if y'all live in Nelson County, y'all know the terrain, you cannot feasibly use all the terrain in a given area for development out here. So just thought I'd throw that out there as well. So this is basically your end result. This was a photo taken by our friends at Google out in Washington State. As you can see here, this is outside of a small town, it's a subdivision, and the largest contiguous tracts of land are maybe here and here, a little over an acre tops. And as pretty much everyone knows, that is very insufficient habitat for almost, I want to say 90% of the forest creatures still living there, which, since they have a greatly reduced habitat or territory, that forces them to travel greatly increased distances to find basic things to survive, such as, say, food or nesting sites. They have to cross roads to do it. So basically displacing the animals, or not so much displacing, but forcing them to make much greater distances across human-developed areas causes a lot of interactions between us and them. And honestly, when has an interaction between a human and a wild animal ever gone well for either party? So animals, and then not exactly a rose garden for the humans either, because think about it. I mean, it could be not as bad, like trash burritos on your front porch or a few fewer carrots. Now, there's a flip side of that coin, and I have friends out in Colorado who have told me horror stories about this kind of thing. So, yeah, these kind of speak for themselves, okay? Well, this is actually a big problem in the southern states, is feral hogs. And that's a 300-pound feral boar at about 50 miles an hour. I think y'all get the point. So stepping back from just sort of human-animal interactions, looking at the sort of ecosystem as a whole, you can't remove 80 to 85% of the area without seriously messing with the ecology. Now, bear with me on this next one, because it's kind of a leap of logic, but there was actually a multi-page research paper done by people a whole lot smarter than me on this. So there's an established principle in geometry that when you decrease the size of a shape, the ratio of its exterior area to its interior volume, surface area to interior area greatly increases. And so a thing I found out, and this was partly through my community service as well, talking to people involved there, is that there are a lot of plants, nuisance plants, that thrive in forest edge areas. Two of the native ones we have are wild grapevine, and y'all probably are familiar with honeysuckle. And again, in my community service, I had to fight with these things like you would not believe. I'll explain more of that later, but the big thing about grapevine is, as you can see, those are very thick vines, about that big around. What it does is it will essentially grow up a tree and grow it so heavy that it will either snap the top of the tree out from the weight, or the first big windstorm, snowstorm, whatever comes through, will just tear it out. Now you've got a lot of dead snags falling on the edge of your forest. That's in backyards, assuming residential, that is. Well, backyards, parking lots, that too. And this was one interesting fact that I really thought, that I found in my research that should bear mentioning, is this little guy right here. Indigenous American white-footed mouse. They actually thrive in fragmented areas. There was a study conducted in southern New England that found that population density increased dramatically after a subdivision was put in one particular area. Now the downside is, while they make it into your birdseed, that's not a big deal. White-footed mouse is the primary natural reservoir of Lyme's disease. So you get a lot of those in contact with, in close proximity with humans in these fragmented areas. Tick bites mouse, tick gets off mouse, tick bites pet, pet infects human. It's not as big of a concern as I'm making it sound, but it is there and it has happened. There are many documented cases. So just another thing. And the other thing is species introduction, and I'm not talking about down in the glades. That's just human ignorance. So the big one we have around here, I don't even need to tell you about this, paradise tree. Y'all know about those. And then this was the big one, cats. We tend to forget that our furry friends are predators at heart, and cats have been responsible for the near extinction and, in several cases, the actual extinction of many species of small birds and mammals. So just basically putting people into close contact with nature and very limited amounts of nature is bad for all parties involved. So amid all the gloom and doom, yes, there is some good news. Surprise, surprise. So the problem with fragmentation is you can't really combat it the way you would say like an oil spill or a train wreck. You can't really remedy what's already been done. Then you would basically keep playing connect the dots on a ginormous scale, and that just can't be done. So what you can do, and this is something I found through my research and my internship, is that you can prevent it or at least slow it in the future. There are a number of legal programs that I found out about. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, give y'all something to look at while I talk about this. This is going to take a while. So there's basically two programs, that can be used to sort of lock land in a position where it cannot be fragmented, divided, cleared, however you want to put it. One is a conservation easement. This is basically a binding legal contract between the landowner and a holding agency. And what it does is it basically stipulates you can and cannot do this with the land. So you could put conditions in there. It can be divided like once for my kids, and then after that, no dice. It can be farmed for timber and replanted. It can be used for hunting. Or, as some crazy people do, I don't want anybody to do anything with it at all. So the best thing is it's not tied to the life of an individual. A conservation easement is tied to the deed of the land. So it exists in perpetuity, for forever. And it's a binding legal document with full legal penalties. If a contract is violated, the parties can be prosecuted. So it is a very, very powerful tool to keep land in one piece and in an area where it can function sustainably. The second, and this is the more versatile, more attractive option to a lot of people, is something called a family LLC. And this addresses more specifically the inheritance side of things. The reason land is divided to make things fair is, to think about it, people never agree on one thing almost all the time. So you get brothers, they want to do different things with the land. So the way a family LLC works is all the parties who would stand to inherit the land basically form a company, and the land is, instead of being placed as a direct possession of these individuals, it's listed as an asset of the LLC, of the corporation. And so everybody who has a stake in the land basically has a say in how it's used. So if somebody wants to just clear cut it and nobody else does, then they get overruled. But everybody does have a say, so everybody's more or less happy, and it can be moved on. And the best part is, when individuals pass away, the land is not fragmented and broken down among individuals. It stays contiguous. It's just their shares are passed on to the next generation. So it keeps the land in the family, it keeps it in one piece, and it keeps it functional. Everybody wins. Now the problem, and this was sort of the conclusion of my research. My research question was, what are the negative impacts? You already saw those. And how can we sort of prevent it? And these are the two things. But the thing is, next to nobody knows about them. I mean, I've done forestry for Lord knows how many years with FFA outside of school, and I only barely heard of these. So the basic conclusion of my research was we need a national PR campaign, maybe get Smokey to do it, he's in a lot, and just let people know that these options are out there. A lot of people I've spoken to over the course of my work, and just in general, have said they want to keep their land in the family and they don't want people to mess it up. So I just think that if you could actually get this information out there, you really could do something with it. And so getting out of the research, getting into what I actually did for like my okay, getting into what I did for my internship. So I worked with this gentleman over here. His name is Mr. Bill Perry. He's the area forester specialist for the James River Work Area. That's Nelson, Campbell, and Amherst County, if I'm not mistaken. And he works with the Virginia Department of Forestry. So I've worked with him before several times, and I was really in a bind getting my project locked down at the beginning. So I contacted him out of desperation. He said, "Sure, I'll work with you again. What do you want to do?" So I'm really grateful to him for that. What we did was, unlike everybody else in the U.S., how like I went to this business and I worked there. Foresters, they have an office, but they don't use it much. That pretty much is the man's office right there, because he works over such a large area. He does so many different things. He oversees timber sites, water quality violations, planting quality, that sort of thing. So it was basically, we meet up in the high school parking lot, head off in the truck to Lord knows what back road, to Lord knows where. I mean, so some of the things we did, this is a logging job up near Wintergreen. We were overseeing, making sure they weren't violating water quality laws. They were only harvesting the trees they were supposed to. They were. And then this was really neat. This was a tract that had been clear cut over in Amherst County, and you can't really tell from this picture, but it had been replanted with year-old loblolly pine seedlings at, I believe, a 10 by 12 spacing. So what we did was we did a planting quality check. We went out and we basically just took a stick and threw it, and wherever it landed, we did like a 16-foot diameter circle, and we recorded how many trees were in the circle. And we made sure they were planted right, no J roots, no crookedness, nothing like that. And we took a whole bunch of those, and that we used them to extrapolate the quality for the entire site, which was actually pretty good, I gotta say. So, and the best part was all this time riding around, it gave me the opportunity to ask Mr. Perry a lot of questions about fragmentation, forestry policy, and it really gave me the opportunity to approach my research portion of the project not just from, say, an environmentalist point of view, but also, I don't want to say economy, but more of a practical local point of view. But I digress a little bit there. So my community service, and it was a really long, odd string of events that led to me working here. But so I wound up working with the Rockfish Valley Foundation. They're a nonprofit group out past Nelly's Ford, Virginia, and they oversee this place here. This is the Natural History Center, as you give out a sign. And behind it is a place called Spruce Creek Park. And I was very, very lucky that when I showed up, I met him. It was back in September. It was that week where it rained and everything flooded. And we were just sitting there listening to rain hammer on the tin roof. And he said, "We've got this trail we're thinking about doing. You interested?" I said, "Yeah." And not a day has gone by that I haven't been glad I said that. So the proposed trail was right along the banks of Spruce Creek in the park right behind the center. And the really neat thing was not just a trail, anybody can clear a trail. The cool thing about this is it's going to be replanted with native Virginia flowering plants to sort of showcase, that you really don't need to plant invasive species to make everything look nice. And it's about 450 feet long. That's kind of the brush I had to deal with. You can see what I was talking about with the honeysuckle taking over, okay? So, yeah, I actually wound up filling out my pickup truck about 8 times worth of brush to get it all cleared out. And this is what the trail looks like. This was when we had a major windstorm and all the plastic blew off. But this is what it looks like right now. You can see where I sort of cleared the brush. It's about 450 feet long, follows the bank of the creek, which is behind all that brush. And then we're actually just starting to get to the point where it's going to be dug and gravelled and then replanted. And I'm actually going to try and stick with this until I leave the county this fall, or summer, depending on how things go. But I'm going to try and see this through as far as I can, not just going to quit as soon as the school year's done with. So looking back on what I did, I'm going to tell you what everybody else has. I put everything off as long as possible. Just lazy pump on a log. I'm guilty of it. Everybody in this room is guilty of it. The hardest thing for me was I kept getting hit with setbacks. It wasn't so much bumps in the road as a road of speed bumps. Ms. Tinder will tell you I went through 3 different internships that fell through and 2 community service projects that didn't work. And I'm going to say I almost took the lazy man's way out. I was halfway through getting out of the program. Thankfully, everybody talked me out of it. So that's why I'm here and not somewhere else enjoying my Friday. So looking back on it, don't put things off. I'm very happy with what I did. Can't say enough good things about it. And in the future, I'm going to tech as well. Favorite college at this school, College of Engineering specifically, mechanical engineering more specifically. They'll tell you, ever since I was a kid, I just loved getting up to my elbows in machine guns. So And the other thing is, I've had a love for recreational target shooting and hunting for pretty much as long as I could hold a BB gun. So I was sort of hoping to take that on, and I would like to work in civilian firearms R&D. Civilian. Everybody freaks out when I tell them that. It's just hunting weapons here. Hopefully at Remington, they make good stuff. But any American company, I really would just like to stay here and work. And then my other long-term plan is maybe trade out the Dodge for something a little more sporty. 74 Stingray right there. Okay. And that's what I did. Any questions? Rachel.
I have a question about the plants that you're planting on that trail. You said that they're native Virginia plants. Are they all just native Virginia plants, or are they indigenous to the county?
Virginia in general, but most of them can be found in the county. Like, we're going to be putting in dogwood and redbud trees. So those are two of them. And honestly, when we met with, we actually have, this project has grown far beyond what I've done. We've actually got the people who did the garden out at the medical center out here looking at this. And she gave me a list of plants she was thinking about. And I have no earthly idea what some of them are. So if you want to look more into this, Rockfish Valley Foundation has a pretty good website. Stephen Tuso, who was in governor's school last year, has worked for them with tech support. And he's actually done a really good job with the maps and with the site content. So if y'all want to find out more about that, I would suggest looking there because I'm hopeless with that. You raise your hand?
I think the work that you researched is really important, and I'm sorry you're not going into it professionally.
Funny thing about that, for the longest time, I really did want to go into a career in forestry. Like I said, I've done so much with forestry here at the Future Farmers of America. I did a forestry camp, a job shadow with Mr. Perry. Then I took a summer job marking timber this past summer on a tract out near Crossroads. It was like climbing Mount Everest in a jungle. So obviously I'm not exactly in the best physical shape, so I decided just not up to the legwork involved. So I sort of took a step back, reevaluated what do I want to do, and settled on firearms. I should have phrased that differently. My apologies.
Thank you for being a PR person for the Agriculture District Land Conservation. Like you said, not enough people know about it, and you're a really good spokesman.
Oh, thank you very much.
That would be a fabulous thing to do.
But someone who researches about nature conservancy, that's really good.
Yes and no. A lot of the academic stuff I got into wasn't nature conservancy, but I sort of cut this down for time. When I talked about conservation easements and holding companies, Nature Conservancy is one of the larger holding companies who maintains and oversees the easements in Virginia and all over the country for that matter. The other ones in Virginia are Department of Forestry. They currently hold 118 throughout the state. I actually met and interviewed the I forget his official title, but his name is Dr. Mike Santucci, and he oversees the enforcement and implementation of all these easements through the entire state. And I sat down for an hour with him, just talked about it. It actually sent my project in an entirely different direction because, like I said, I'd never heard of family LLCs. He told me about them, he explained them, and I completely changed where I went with it. So yes, I have heard, yes, I did look into the foundation a little bit, but no, it was not primarily in what I did. Bishop.
I'd like to second the comment over here that I think you would make an excellent spokesperson for this topic, especially since you mentioned that there is a greater need for civilian awareness of this topic. And on that note, I'd like to commend you for the depth and breadth of your knowledge and what you've shared with us. I think every question that came through my mind was virtually answered in your presentation. But the question I have for you right now is, you've addressed what citizens who are landowners can do to prevent forest fragmentation. What about citizens who aren't landowners? What can they do to prevent fragmentation, to increase awareness of the topic, and to prevent or address some of the negative issues that you brought up?
That's tough. Basically, just put the word out. And, well, okay, so I can tie this in. So I actually interviewed two people professionally. The other was a lady named Ms. Kendricks, who worked at the school system, but she also founded an organization 11 years ago now. She was very very strong on that point. It has been 11 years, and they do exactly what I'm doing now. Pretty much is they don't oversee easements or so much implement them, but they do. That is their only function, is to raise awareness that that fragmentation is a problem and this is an option for what you can do. And she herself is a landowner, but it is a fairly large and growing group of people who some may have family landowners, some who are just have an apartment somewhere. So I guess the biggest thing is just get involved and familiarize yourself with this, and then just tell other people. I mean, word spreads faster by word of mouth and social media than Lord knows what else these days. Answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Dr.
I
Weeder.
would like to say great job, by the way, too. It was fantastic. I was just curious, you're talking about the trail you're working on with
Yes.
the native plants. Does that organization work at all with the Wintergreen Nature Foundation? Because I know they do a lot to promote native plants in the wintergreen community. I didn't know if they did anything outside of that as well.
From what I've heard and what I've spoken with, I forgot that gentleman in the picture on the bridge is the head of Rockfish Valley Foundation, Peter Agelasto. I can't believe that slipped my mind. When I've spoken with him, he's mentioned they have done a lot of cooperative stuff with Wintergreen, but primarily they just sort of do their own thing. When they do like larger projects like the trail or putting in like a new wildflower garden like they're doing this year, they may reach out to Wintergreen for like PR support or resources, that sort of thing.
I know they grow native plants and they usually have like a native plant sale.
Yeah.
Or I just think the plant involved at all.
At this point, we're still in the planning processes of what we're actually going to plant, so that's figuring out sourcing, arrangements, that sort of thing. So I believe Wintergreen's involved, but I'm not entirely sure how much at this point. Anything else? And from the lack of hands, I'm going to say no. Hope y'all have a good Friday.